Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your patience and persistence these last 2 days. I understand, I know there's a lot of hours to be sitting before all of us, and when you're tailing Charlie like I am in this batting order, most of the ground's been broken. But I do have a couple things. But first, I was kind of puzzled hearing General McKenzie's characterization of our departure now out of Afghanistan as being something other than a surrender. It doesn't feel that way to me. It certainly doesn't feel that way to the American public. And, 20 years ago, exactly, I was sitting in Bahrain. We were planning the initial strikes into Afghanistan. And at that time, our marching orders were to defeat al-Qaeda and to ensure that Afghanistan would no longer be a safe haven for terrorists. And now, fast forward 20 years, those conditions, while, General Milley, you said within maybe 6 to 36 months, the country will be ripe again, potentially to be launching strikes like that or targeting against us. It doesn't feel like it's anything other than a surrender. But General McKenzie, you had mentioned that holding Bagram was untenable under the circumstances and that the Bagram option went away when you were given an end strength of 650. I understand that. I assume that you mean that it was untenable because of the troop limitation. But if you had not been limited, would your professional military advice been to relinquish Bagram?
So at a troop level of 2,500, we would have held Bagram, and that would have been my recommendation. That was my position.
Okay. So you had also mentioned that there was no tactical reason to hold Bagram. Would you elaborate? I assume that would mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but strategically, would you see a value to us still being
so when I said there was no tactical reason to hold Bagram, I was specifically talking about the NEO operation.
Okay.
So once we went down to 650, and then we were given the orders to conduct a NEO. For the reasons the Secretary and the Chairman have already outlined, the center of gravity of that was actually HCI. It's where the people are. You got the MOG operating capacity there to move airplanes in and out. I will tell you this, though, Representative. We had a branch plan to seize Bagram Airfield should HCI have become untenable. But that would have required, as has already been noted, a significant investment in combat power. And Bagram and HCI never became untenable, so we did not have to consider that plan. Although we had a highly detailed plan to be able to do it, it simply was not necessary because we were able to maintain the throughput at HCI. And again, had we gone into Bagram, we would have introduced significant additional U.S. combat forces into the country and probably would have provoked another conflict with the Taliban, which would have been a political decision, not a military decision.
I understand, political decision. But here it is. Since 1898, we've maintained Guantanamo Bay. So we do have a history of keeping territory, even in lands where we don't have friendly forces there at our side. But I do know, seeing already the challenge with over the horizon, conducting our strikes over the horizon, it sure would be nice to have that field now. Secretary Austin, I just want to wholeheartedly agree with Chairman Smith's comment earlier that we make the decisions in the world that we live in, and we don't have the luxury of having the magic wand. I get that, and that's the world you all face every day. You told us that you would like to have seen this conflict end with a negotiated settlement. General Milley, you did as well. I know there's been a lot of talk about whether President Trump should have been negotiating with the Taliban or not, and that's a different conversation for another day. But those terms that were agreed to were not really complied with by the Taliban. And here it is, we know that, General Milley, in your testimony, 7 of the 8 conditions that were given to the Taliban were broken. In light of that failure, Secretary Austin, do you think it was wise for us to continue with the timeline, or do we feel compelled? Because I constantly hear the administration pushing back saying, we had no choice, our hands were tied. The Trump administration tied our hands to this timeline. But the Taliban didn't comply with their end of the deal, and now we're kind of stuck in a bad situation. Do you feel that we should have pushed a timeline, not necessarily to stay in Afghanistan? I get it. I think that there's a time for us to start negotiating an exit there, but in light of how disastrous the hasty withdrawal turned out to be, we could have used more time to get those folks out.
Well, quite frankly, because of the fact that, for a year we weren't striking the Taliban, they were increasing in combat power. We released 5,000 prisoners, which kind of regenerated combat power for them. They were able to make advances against the Afghan security forces because, you know, we weren't doing things to fully support
And again, I apologize, the gentleman's time has expired. That'll have to suffice.